What is your, it's not, what it looks like, story? I was a lab tech, working at a pharmaceutical research lab, and we ran out of pregnancy tests. I went to Walgreens to buy some home tests, and I needed 5 of them. I was about 8 months pregnant. My aunt is a primary care doctor. She says she's required to ask every female patient if they're pregnant. Some of them look heavily pregnant, so they'll just give her a strange look and gesture to their stomach, like, obviously. But others look heavily pregnant, and when she asks if they're expecting, they'll shrug and say, nope. She's like, some of them are thin, except it looks like they're smuggling watermelons up their shirts. But they're just skinny women with huge bellies. It's more common than you'd think. First time one of them told me she wasn't pregnant, I was this close to gesturing to her stomach and saying, dude. My personnel clerk was telling me about a SH issue in my office. As soon as she repeated what was said, are you asking me for a B job? The store gossip walked by, and sure enough, I'm being spoken to by corporate HR within the hour. Thankfully, I had proof of what was actually going on. I worked in a supermarket when I was younger, and my boss found me one day, lying on my stomach, in the aisle, with my arm fully outstretched, holding a large jar of pickles. This was long before planking, but he still thought was something being done for the lulz, and started chewing me out, before a customer intervened and explained the situation. The fact of the matter was, I was walking down the aisle, when out of nowhere, the jar just slipped off the shelf, and I dove and caught it. That lady saved my ass that day, and the clerk who was ringing her up got our secret signal, which meant many items were accidentally not scanned. I was a student athlete in high school, and our athletic trainer was an attractive 24-year-old girl. I had a hip injury that required an ACE wrap around my hip joint. One day, she was wrapping my hip before practice in a side office of a bigger training room, and 2 other athletes opened the door that we forgot to lock. What they saw was the back of me, with my pants down, and the trainer in front of me, on her knees, with her head in my crotch area, and her hand reaching back, grabbing my butt. Her hand was only there for a brief second, while she supported herself. But teenage boys only need to see that image for a fraction of a second for them to imagine something else. In case you're wondering, this side office was always used for more personal treatment, like my hip injury. Girls would be taken in there if they had to remove clothing, for example. The bigger training room was always busy, and it had a doorway that was always open, so we didn't want passing teachers, or other students, or parents, or visitors, getting a sneaky look at teens in their underwear, getting injury treatment. Sister went to the bathroom, and I hid under her bed to scare her when she came back in. She came back in only wearing a towel. Turns out, she was trying on clothes, or something. I yelled loudly, "Hey! I'm hiding under your bed, and I'm coming out with my eyes closed." At first, I thought to stay put and sneak out later, but figured that would seem way worse when she sees me come out of her room, and is like, WTF? TLDR, innocent scare prank, turned into creepy peeping Tom situation. I yelled loudly, "Hey! I'm hiding under your bed, and I'm coming out with my eyes closed." Best way you could have possibly handled it. I knew a girl who was going to do the same thing to her sister, scare her by hiding under the bed. Sister walked in and lay down. Girl was halfway out the bed and ready to terrify her when she realized sis was touching herself. She slid back under the bed and kept quiet. It was traumatic. I've posted this before on my old account, but it's funny, so I'll share again. My family and I went to this really weird little festival that happens every spring to celebrate a frozen dead guy. I wanted to do the polar plunge with my dad, so I used spray hair dye to make myself look a bit gray, and I put on a fake beard so I could look like his mini-me. It was so windy that year that they couldn't keep the warming tents up, so our alternative option was to pack in the back of a 1970s ambulance and try and undress, then redress in warm clothes with 15 other random naked strangers. My dad didn't want to do that, so he decided he would walk up the main street and change in the cafe bathroom. Unfortunately, it was so cold and windy that hypothermia was starting to set in. I had to go into this tiny-ass bathroom with my dad to help him get changed. As we were nearly done, some old lady came barging in the bathroom, 'cause we were taking way too long. At that very moment, I realized I had effed up. My dad was standing up, and I was on my knees, trying to button up his jeans. Levi 501s have a lot of buttons, and they are weird to button on someone else. She had a look of horror on her face, and the only thing I could blurt out was, "No, it's okay. He's my dad." That was absolutely not the right thing to say, lol. Spider in my car got me pulled over for swerving all over the road. We found it, and the cop just laughed at me. I'm not scared of spiders, but that big effer was dangling in my face. LOL. I was at a mall with a friend, and we were about to get in the car, when she notices a big ass garden spider, one of those yellow and black ones, dangling off her sun visor, right over the driver's wheel. She does not like bugs, and this was a big one in her eyes. She screams, and I look, and I do not like bugs either, so I scream, and we bail out. Slamming the doors shut, mall security saw us, and called the local constable, who came over ready for some shit to go down. We explained the situation, but the spider had gone out of sight, so the constable goes and peels down the visor, and there it was, and we discovered that this armed, vest-wearing, well-trained police officer does not like bugs, and also screamed. Found my then-girlfriend's panties in the laundry at my house, and packed them in my book bag to give back to her. Brought them with me next time I visited, and of course, they weren't hers. Thing is, I didn't cheat, and they definitely didn't fit anyone else. I would have known in recent memory. We weren't exclusive more than a couple weeks at that point. She kinda just hit me with a palm face and an eye roll, and we never talked about it again, and laughed it off in the moment. I still don't know where those damn underwear came from, or if they were planted, or what. Do you happen to use a laundromat? This also happened to me when my husband and I were dating. I found a pair of boxers in my laundry, and went to give them back, and they were not his. It took a while, but we realized they probably accidentally got stuck in the same dryer I used. My cat also used to snoop through guests' purses, and once pulled out my friend's lipstick and ran off. We all saw it happen, but that could have been bad as well if I happened to find it myself under the bed or something. No. At the time, I lived with my grandma, and she did my laundry most of the time. I thought they could have been my cousins, who had visited the week prior, but they probably wouldn't have fit, and they definitely weren't my grandma's. But they would have had to have come from a room in the house, and then mixed up with my laundry. Grandma thought they were the girlfriends, too. A long while ago now, I was walking home from a friend's house. We had been smoking and drinking, so I was a little out of it. It was around 1 a.m., and I was almost home, when I saw this little old lady, doubled over, and struggling to walk. I asked her if she was okay, and if she needed help. She said she was fine, but asked if I could help her home, as she didn't live too far away. So, I gave her my arm for her to support herself, and off we went. Her home wasn't that far, but it was slow going. At this point, I had already decided that I was going to ring an ambulance for her, but thought I'd get her home first. When we eventually made it to her home, she took her key and opened her door, only to collapse into her house and pass out. And then the house alarm went off. And then her neighbors appeared. Luckily, the neighbors believed me, and the old lady managed to get some medical attention. I've posted this before, but what the hey, I was hanging out with a guy friend, I'm a girl, watching movies. I fell asleep in the middle of the third one, had a hot dream, and woke up to my own orgasm, while he sat on the other end of the couch, sporting an erection, but with both hands up, and looking equal parts terrified and horny. I was beyond mortified. He was like, I didn't know what to do. I had actually been dreaming about him, and didn't know if I'd said his name or not. I got the F out of there. I have never been so effing mortified in my life. But, after a lot of him pushing, and me being embarrassed, we ended up dating. Been together about a year now. I worked on a low-budget movie that never got finished. For one scene, we needed scenes from the crime, gory bloody pictures they would put up on the board in the police office. Dumbass I worked with dropped them off at Walmart for printing and enlargement, back when that was a thing. He did not warn them. When we went to pick them up, he got pounced on by police and had much explaining to do. Also, same guy. I had made 2 corpses from skeletons, using the old tissue paper and latex method. Same genius, just tosses them into the back of his pickup truck to take them to the set. Got pulled over for speeding. They pretty much were pulling him out of driver's side window. While was he screaming, "They aren't real people. over and over again. When they finally touched one, and realized it is plastic, they let him go, while ticketing him for everything they could, because they were pissed. Personally, I was thrilled my work was taken so well. My mom once barged on my room without knocking, with a shocked face, and asking, "What are you doing?" I was laying in bed, laptop on my belly, chocolate on my mouth, watching YouTube exercise videos. They kept making noises, she assumed, was either sex, or porn. To this day, we laugh so hard about it. My mom and I were passing by my brother's closed bedroom door, when we heard his girlfriend saying something like, "A little harder. Almost there, it's a tight fit." She sounded a little out of breath. Without hesitating, my mom got this furious expression, knocked loudly, waited half a second, and rammed the door open, like, "What the hell are you?" His girlfriend was making him change his sheets, because he'd gotten Cheeto dust all over them. My mom adored her after that. I told her they were probably putting on fresh sheets before sex. Mom was not amused. When I was a teen, I went on a road trip, about 6 hours away, to meet some friends. I brought a female friend with me, cause it sounded fun. We arrived to the mutual friend's house, and they show us our room with a single bed. I was mortified, and as soon as they left us alone, I told the girl that this wasn't my plan, and I'll see if I can find a couch or something. Thankfully, she was cool with non-sexually sharing a bed. I awake in the middle of the night, with a pretty severe asthma attack. My inhaler is on the nightstand on the other side of her. The rest of the room is covered in various boxes, making a walk around the bed time-consuming and dangerous, so I get a bit closer, and reach over her, carefully, to grab the inhaler. My hands are shaky, and I knock it to the floor. I realize I have to climb over her to grab it. I sit up, throw one leg over, and reach down, grabbing my inhaler, and taking it. I smile in relief, look down, and I've woken her up. In the middle of the night, by straddling her. She just closed her eyes, and went back to sleep. Assisted teacher in getting books. She fell off the stool, and I dropped the books, to use myself as a cushion. She wasn't on top, but it looked strange from an angle. Another teacher was laughing and watching. I was red. "I don't really understand the position you guys were in. Could you explain it a bit more?" She landed partly on my chest, hands by my head, and face near mine. I had grabbed her to try and hold her up. Owned a horse as a kid. Partner went with me, couple months back, to visit him at the stable he lived at, to visit him. Said horse has a habit of nipping, not out of aggression, to show affection and play. Horse was nuzzling his head onto my chest, and bit right by my tit. Gently pushed his head away, but that shit hurt. Went home with partner, and was getting undressed for some quality time. He took a look at me, and went, "What's that?" I looked down, and there was a giant forming bruise and bite, from where the horse nipped me. I quickly explained, but he found it effing hilarious. In Mexico City on a high school trip, I went to sleep alone, and woke up with one of the girls from the trip. She looked confused. I looked confused. We both clarified that we did not, in fact, do it. This was me confirming for her. What we decided was that she got super drunk the night before, came into our room, instead of hers, and got in bed with me, thinking I was her sister. I'm surprised no one called the police on me for this. I do general repairs, as a side gig. I offered to help a friend fix his sink one day. So, I parked my work van on the street outside his house, and start organizing tools to bring into the house. Suddenly, I look up, and I see his 3-year-old daughter has somehow wandered out of the house, and is walking in the middle of the road. Yikes. So, I quick run after her, grab her off the road. However, I couldn't bring her into the house just yet, because my van was still completely open, with tools strewn about. So, I had to put her in my van, while I finished organizing. To anyone else, it probably looked like I kidnapped a girl into my van. 1. Me, M, watching American History X, with my male roommate. Right when the shower hour stuff was happening, my friend opened the apartment door. Said, and quickly left, LOL. 2. Working at construction job site. Plug in my battery charger, in open outlet a generator. Roofer comes down, and yells at me, for unplugging his compressor. I go about working, and notice his plug for the compressor has fallen out of the outlet by itself. I pick up his plug, and before I can plug it in, he comes around the corner, and says, "Aha! Caught you. Guy wanted to fight me, lol." Back in 7th grade, when I was at peak awkward teen boy, there came a day in gym, where we were set to play volleyball. The only problem was, that when we got to the gym, the coach realized, she'd forgotten the volleyballs, but no problem, because they were just sitting in the storage room, in the girls' locker room, and she decided, to send me, a boy, to go get them. She assured me, that I would not get in trouble, if I was caught, but even still, I was about as not at all thrilled over being given this job, as I possibly could be, because I was sure, that if any girl saw me in there, she would tell the rest of the school, that I was a pervert, sneaking into the girls' locker room. Well, halfway through the mission, my worst nightmare came true, and I turned a corner to confront two girls, who were heading back into the locker room. They stared at me, I stared at them. I started panicking, and in my discombobulation, I decided the best possible thing to do at that moment, would be, to tell these two girls, that I'm not a pervert, because obviously, that would have cleared everything up, but I was so flustered, that what came out instead was, "I'm not gay," and then I really smoothed things over by running away. Surprisingly, the fallout for this wasn't too bad. I got made fun of a bit for it, but people had pretty much moved on, by the next day. Not me, though. 27 years later, this still haunts me. I had just got back to my college dorm from work, where I had spilled quite a bit of lemonade on myself, and I checked in my GF when I got back. When we got in my room, she dropped something, I think, maybe her chapstick, but can't remember, behind my mini fridge, and was bent over, to try and find it. I was taking my lemonade-soaked pants off, and was planning to change into something clean, when my brother, who was my roommate at the time, walked in. He still makes jokes about that, from time to time. I was staying over at a friend's cottage in the country, with my girlfriend, now wife. A bunch of my friends were there as well, male and female, but we got the spare bedroom, because we were a couple. We all went to bed. After about 20 minutes, the bed we were in, collapsed, making a terrible clatter. Instantly, the whole house erupted in cheers and laughter. Reality, bed was very rickety. No one had actually slept in it, for a long time, and we were just peacefully resting in the bed, when it just collapsed. But of course, everyone assumed, we were screwing up a storm, and literally, broke the bed. There's a brand called, Lonely Ghost, and it has a tire, that often say, "Call me if you're lonely," or "Text me," and it has an actual number. My friend had the hoodie with the phone number on it, and we were bored, and wanted to see what actually happened. I texted the number, "I'm lonely," it gave a cute little auto-reassurance response, and a GIF or something. Anyways, boyfriend at the time, saw the text to an unsaved random number, saying, "I'm lonely." Had to pull up the hoodie with the number, haha. When I was a teen, my bud and I, got invited to a dinner, midday meal, these old men had every Wednesday, at one's pond house. So, we're all eating, and the old men, are talking about some trial, that's been of interest in the community, and circumstantial evidence. One old man tells this story. When I was 13 to 14 we had a couple of milk cows. One morning, Dad and me, went down to milk the cows. We'd about finished up, and I had to piss real bad, so, I walked out and around the side of the barn. As I was pissing, one of the calves walked right past me, and I, just on the spur of the moment grabbed it by the tail. Well, that pulled me off balance. I was stumbling behind the calf, with one hand holding it by the tail, and holding my D in the other hand, trying not to piss on myself, when Pop walks around the corner. He doesn't say anything, just turns around, and walks back around the corner. Now, my dad went to his grave, believing, I was trying to F that damned calf. And, I will never convict anyone, on circumstantial evidence. Mine's, a not what it sounds like, story. I worked in heavy industry and was taking college classes at night with a supervisor, from another competitor company. We teamed up, as lab partners. Just to put the context of this story in place, consider the time period, was the late 90s. Had a salesman come in, and while talking, he mentioned the other company, and I asked him, if he knew my lab partner by his name. When he said, yes, I said, he's my lab partner. He gave me a weird look, and wandered off, and talked to a couple of other staff members before leaving. After leaving, the other workers were laughing, as the salesman told them, he didn't know I was gay. Evidently, he heard lab, as life. Always wonder if he thought that about my lab partner when he went to the other company. Moving house, and my father-in-law was helping on moving day. My wife and I were well prepared, with only our bed remaining assembled, and everything else packed and ready to go. I lifted the mattress, and had to clumsily explain to my wife's dad that all of the straps on the bed frame were just to hold the fitted sheet in place. When I was 16, I met a girl on MySpace that lived in Canada, which happened to be a short drive from where I lived in the US, so we planned to meet up in Windsor, just across the border from me. I had never crossed the border by myself, and was fairly new to driving solo. When I got to the border, I accidentally pulled into one of the express lanes, and just drove to the toll booth ahead, thinking I would just explain that I had messed up, and chose the wrong lane. Whoops, no big deal, I'll just pay, and be on my way. Well, no, they thought it was suspicious, so they asked me to pull into an open hangar nearby, and sent some officers to check out my car. When they approached, and asked me to pop the trunk, I just did it, because I was shitting my pants. My parents did not know where I was, and I was so scared of getting in trouble with Border Patrol. So, right after I popped the trunk, they call more officers over. I am asked to step out and put in handcuffs, and then the questioning starts. Who am I, and where am I going? Who is the girl, and how do I know her? At this point, I'm terrified. They all went from pretty chill to very serious, in a matter of minutes. Then one of them reaches into the trunk, and pulls out a sword, and it hits me. A week earlier, I had been filming a video for one of my classes with my friends, and it was a war scene from a book. We had amassed all of our medieval mall ninja weapons for the video, and in the end, the weapons all ended up in my trunk, and I completely forgot about them. I'm talking swords, axes, flails, bludgeons, bridges, nunchucks, everything. For the next 2 to 3 hours, I was questioned, while they picked my car apart. In the end, I think the only reason they let me go is because I also had a giant bag of Magic the Gathering cards in my backseat, and after explaining the game to them, they realized I had no life, and was probably too nerdy to be any real threat. I also had a single rose for her on the passenger seat. I know, I am so suave, so I think they could see I didn't have bad intentions. They let me through. I met up with the girl, and we made out on a play structure for like 4 hours. Drove home that night, and never told my parents. To be young again.